All right, welcome back. We continue live right here on Pittsburgh CW. Bob Pompeani, Tim Benz will both be on the showdown tonight, 11:35 KDKA. Right now, we're going out to the lines. We have RJ first up. Fred in North Huntington on line number 2. Hey, Fred, what's up?
How you doing, guys?
Good. How are you?
Good. Two quick questions. My first question is, I'm a little concerned with Brian Dumoulin right now. I think it's been about 9.5 weeks, and we haven't really got an update on his progress at all. And I really think the Penguins really miss him. When I see some of the problems they're having right now defensively, you know, he's their best, in my opinion, stay-at-home defenseman. And another question I'd like to ask real quick, Bob, where did you guys get the Pittsburgh Heineken neon sign? It's a great sign. And I just wondered if you give me information on that. I'll hang up.
Okay, I don't know the information on that.
Well, from Heineken, I would think.
It's a Heineken product.
Via
so,
Heineken,
yeah.
yes.
I'll find out. I don't know. As far as Dumoulin, you're right. And this is a guy who is so good with Chris Letang. When those two are together, they occupy a whole bunch of minutes every single game, and it makes it much better. As far as why we haven't heard anything, they know, and if they feel they need to go out and make another acquisition because he may not be where he needs to be, they may do it. But I think they know where he is, and anything that is done before the deadline will be part of that equation.
But I'm with him, though. I would have thought he would have been at least skating more now or further down. When they said 6 to 8, I was hoping for 8, and it's beyond 8 now. So I know they really tend to clench around injury information over there, and they always tend to err on the side of caution and try to tamp down any discussion about injuries. But I'm with the caller. I'm starting to wonder how serious this is beyond even just what was predicted.
He is a very important part to this team. There's no question about that. I think he is their plus-minus king when he's back there. He does a lot of stuff that allows Chris Letang to have the freedoms he has, and he makes Letang better, I think, as well. Let's go to Don in Mount Washington. Hello, Don. Welcome to the Sports Call.
Hey, Bob. How you doing? Hi, Jim. I just want to say that I like your new set, and I seen your daughter on Friday, and I think the Penguins are doing a great job. And I hope they could go and get in the lead. And have a good night, buddy.
All right. Thank you, sir.
What?
I don't know.
Get in the lead?
Get in the lead.
In the lead?
He's an optimistic Penguin fan. You can understand that.
In the lead of what? In the lead of the East?
I know a lot of people out there on Twitter want to talk about the Garrett Rudolph thing, and that was something that became a big story yesterday because Myles Garrett had talked the night before, and then Mason Rudolph 1,000% denied it, said it was a bold-faced lie, and then his representation got on Twitter and said, all right, now you've crossed the line. So now the question would be, Tim, what does Mason Rudolph do? Does he actually go through with a slander lawsuit, or does he not? He threatened to do it, and the attorneys say, hey, all right, now we're to the point now where you've opened yourself up to litigation. Will they actually do it?
I don't know. I'm not sure exactly what the rules are when one union member does that to another union member. Does it have to go through the union first? I know that in California, I've been told anyway, that in California, if you do something like this and it doesn't go your way, not only do you have to pay the legal fees of the other person. They're both public figures, so I don't know if that makes it easier or harder to do in California. I guess it's a little bit easier to do it in California than had it been the case in Pennsylvania. There are all sorts of variables, but at the very least, even if they lose, maybe part of the goal is just to have to force Garrett to say what he's saying under oath, as well as those in the NFL, as well as the officials who are on the field, as well as Garrett's teammates, those guys as well. So I think that might be the biggest impetus for why they're threatening the legal action.
Well, there's no question at this point, and I've looked just moments ago on Twitter, I haven't seen anyone corroborate his story, come out to defend him, and that includes teammates who would be very eager to do it, I would imagine, if they had heard the same thing.
Wasn't Schobert who was right there?
Yes. Nothing.
Where's he been?
Crickets. So that's the whole thing.
Because now, and actually I bring that up, Bob, because the important twist to what Garrett said in the Mina Kimes interview on ESPN, remember he said it was occurring as they were going down to the ground, as they were engaged going down to the ground. Well, Schobert's there for at least part of that. So he comes back into play now. So now you bring him in.
And the Steeler offensive linemen who were there also. The official, Mike's nothing. So we'll see what goes on, but it's going to be interesting. And I wonder now if the NFL, and I know you had written about this, that there should be 2 suspensions. One for hitting him over the head with a helmet, one for doing what he did in terms of slander. Do you still believe now? The NFL's already said, they have said that he's back. He's reinstated. But the question is, can they go back, double down and say, okay, you were suspended for that, now this?
My belief is that it should have been it should have been a condition on his reinstatement that he was not allowed to comment any further about the racial allegations against Mason Rudolph because they had been investigated and they couldn't be proven. And he goes right out and does it again. And what's interesting to me is if you go back and watch that interview with Mina Kimes, he says specifically at one point that he feels like he's going to get in trouble if he compares his suspension to those of players, for instance, who have been busted for drugs or domestic violence. What does he mean by that? Did the league say, don't compare what we did to those situations? Because if they did that, they should have also said, don't keep pressing on this racial slur thing because it cannot be corroborated and you're defaming not only another player in the league, but you're also now suggesting that we're burying audio and we are hiding evidence, thus making it look like we're harboring racism.
Like a cover up to, yeah, exactly. That's a good point. Let's go to Kurt, who joins us right now on our hotline. Hey, Kurt, what's up?
Hey, hi, Bob. Hi, Tim. How you doing, guys?
What's up?
Hey, on the Rudolph Myles Garrett thing, I can tell you as an African-American, Myles did not say that because if he had, he would still be beating Mason over the head with that helmet. I can tell you that's very deepening and offensive. And then it took him a whole week to claim that.
Right, and then he really didn't do it until he went in to try to get his suspension reduced.
And can I say something? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Week to go. And I think Mason ought to sue him for defamation of character.
Well, that's where we're going with it.
Yes,
they are considering it, and that's why I think it was very specific that his lawyer brought up the state of California,
right?
Too.
When he mentioned California, I knew exactly what they were on.
Yeah,
that's
something, right? But I want to say one thing about the fact that a lot of people keep saying, well, he didn't want to say anything in advance because he didn't want to make it look like he was using racism as the crux for why he did what he did. And he even asserted that in the ESPN interview, too. I didn't want to make it look like I was giving myself an out. And all these complaints about, well, the NFL leaked the information that he made the accusation against Rudolph. What did he think was going to happen if it worked? Think about that. What did he think was going to happen if it worked? What if he got the suspension reduced because the league said, oh, we believe you, Myles. Mason Rudolph used a racial slur. And they reduced his suspension and then correspondingly would have to suspend Rudolph.
Right.
They were going to have to say why. That's the dumbest explanation, the dumbest angle to this whole dumb situation.
It is a dumb situation. So we'll see what happens next. But it's in the court of Mason Rudolph. Will he go through this or not? We'll find out in the coming days and weeks. We'll have more calls on the way. RJ, you will be next. It's 412-575-2600. This is the Nightly Sports Call brought to you by Ireland Contracting 7 nights a week right here at Pittsburgh CW.
Portions of this program sponsored by FanDuel Sportsbook.